Hello everyone, this video is going to be focusing on a pretty easy to farm full set. Some people like using full sets and I don't mind if you do use one. It's completely always up to your choice. Some people like full sets just for the pure aesthetic of a armor set, or maybe they just like uh, the skills that they provide, or maybe you just really like a monster and you like repping them in as much way as possible. So personally, for the full set that I like using the most, it's either a tie between the uh, Kirin set or the Namael beta set. Of course, I have layered armor, so it doesn't look so the helmet doesn't look as ugly as the beta Namael helmet, because I don't like that it just makes your hair really long and blue. I personally like the hood a little bit more. It's a little bit too edgy sometimes for my taste, but I like the underwater look, as my favorite types are the Leviathans and the water monsters. Usually, there are a few exceptions. So, of course, it is just the full Namael beta set. Because I have the layered armor, if you do not have the Namael layered armor, both alpha or uh, the arch tempered, you could go for the alpha set if you wanted to look a little bit better. In my personal opinion, you can certainly do so. Of course, you'll lose out on a lot of decoration slots. So for this, we have the Black Etheria. This is Namael's maxed out gun lance. Of course, you could use this build with whatever weapon you really wanted to, whether it's non-elemental or it's elemental. With the Namael set, I recommend elemental weapons more because of the set passive, which increase as you're attacking the monster consistently, it ups the elemental damage that you do for a set period of time. So for me, I go with the Black Ephira just to match the aesthetic of the build, or the full set. So I usually use the full set when I'm fighting a fire monster, which of course is why I have a fireproof mantle. So when I am attacking a fire monster, I don't suffer from the horrible -14 fire resistance you see in the bottom right corner, because Namael is weak to fire. You also get the -11 dragon resistance, but I feel like that's not too bad, as most monsters do not do dragon damage. There's only two that I know of that outright do dragon damage, and that is Savage Deviljho, regular Deviljho, and uh, the Black Odogaron. I can't remember the name of its actual name. I think it's Death Garen or something like that. So, oh, excuse me. So uh, this obviously gives us maxed out Namael Divinity, which gives us true element acceleration, and that is the thing that gives us the boost in elemental damage as we continuously attack a monster. There are better weapons that proc that effect because the gun lance hits relatively slow in comparison to a lot of weapons in this game, but I like using the gun lance. Another weapon that I personally like using with this build is the bow, because I think the bow just matches Namael's attack pattern the most. You know, where it attacks and then it slides around and then it shoots a beam, or it moves the water and then it slides around again. I think bow or light bowgun most matches Namael's playstyle, but of course you don't have to use those if you do not want to. And then for the decoration slots itself, I went with a Stream Jewel +4 in the helmet. This is because when I use this build, I usually use a water weapon, and the Black Ephira does not have any decoration slots. Woe is me. But this is just to maximize as much elemental water damage as possible. If you're using a different elemental weapon, you could use a different elemental boosting uh, decoration, or maybe you're using an ailment weapon. I don't know why you'd use an ailment weapon with this particular full set, but you could always do so if you really wanted to. Next we have an Iron Wall and Attack Jewel combo jewel, which gives us 1 point into guard and 1 point into attack boost. Guard makes it so when we do block an attack, we take less impact. And as well as later levels, it gives us reduced stamina depletion when we do block. Next is a crit boost jewel. The Namael Gunlance has a base 20% crit chance, I believe. And so with the crit chance that we do slot for, we get up to 40%, which is really good for as little critical eye as we have invested. So I feel at around 30 to 40% is enough crit chance to warrant slotting critical boost. Anything less than that, I don't think it's worth it personally, unless you're going for as high a big damage numbers as possible. Next we have a offensive guard and attack boost combo jewel. This is to max out attack boost, and offensive guard is when you block a attack at the very right moment, as close as possible before it hits you. It just gives you a little bit more attack for doing so. Next we have an expert jewel plus 2 jewel. This is just so we get our critical eye to level 4, which gives us 20% affinity, so we go from 20% affinity to 40% affinity with as little expert jewel investment as possible. Next we have another critical eye jewel. This again brings us to level 4. It's pretty self-explanatory. I feel like I should need to explain affinity too much, other than for people who don't know, affinity means crit chance. Next we have an Iron Wall jewel. This jewel is purely for comfort. You could put something else in here. You could put like another stream jewel or another elemental boosting jewel of the weapon that you're personally using, but I'm using a water gun lance for this build, so I put in a I would put in a water boost jewel, but of course I have Iron Wall for the level 2 guard without my mantle. Next we have a Guardian Expert Jewel combo. This again brings us to level 4 critical chance, and the offensive guard just gives us 10% increased attack after blocking as close as we possibly can instead of 5%, so it just gives us a little bit more damage. Sometimes you can proc this a lot, sometimes you don't proc this at all. The timing isn't too crazy, but I just like using it because I'm a gun lance user usually. Next we have a Tenderizer Jewel. This is when we hit a weak spot and or a wounded part on a monster. We gain 10 to 15% affinity, so this brings us from 40% to 50 to 55% respectively. This just means we'll be critting a little bit more often, which also warrants using the critical boost jewel that much more. And for my mantle jewels, I use 2 Iron Walls, so when I'm fighting a monster that I really don't want to fight, or I really need to be careful fighting, it just makes me a little bit easier for me to defend. Of course, I would be using the Fireproof Mantle because 1, water is usually strongest against fire monsters, and 2, the elemental resistance on this full set is -14, which is never really good. So when you wear the Fireproof Mantle, you are immune to burning and you take a lot less fire damage. This build was pretty straightforward. Again, this is just for people who like to use full sets. I know a lot of people don't, but I also know quite a few people who do, so this is to cater to that little niche of the community. The regular Namael sets aren't too hard to farm. When you do fight Namael, I recommend a waterproof mantle and the thunderproof mantle, and then you swap it out respectively when you feel like you need to. I find that gives me the highest success when fighting Namael, because it just makes dealing with it a little bit easier, as well as when you use the waterproof mantle, you don't get sucked in by the little tide currents that Namael does with the water puddles. I thank you all for watching. I hope this build serves you well. I hope you have a wonderful day, evening, or night, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.